Indian military tensions at the China frontier remain high, but now an Indian chief minister has dared to take on the panda and challenged what he claims is China's illegal occupation of the ancient nation of Tibet.
इंडिया से कोई भी स्टेट डायरेक्टली चाइना से बॉर्डर शेयर नहीं करता है. We share border with Tibet only.
Arunachal Pradesh chief minister said, quote, "If you look at the map, none of the Indian states directly share border with China. We share border with Tibet only. In 1950, China forcefully occupied Tibet. Officially, yes, Tibet is under China and that can't be ruled out, but originally, we share border with Tibet," unquote. The Indian Army and Chinese PLA are on alert ever since the 2020 Galwan Valley clashes. But what you heard here was a Chinese soldier crying out after he was caught by the Indian Army after he strayed illegally into Indian territory. We can see his hands and feet are tied and he was carried away by multiple Indian troops. Multiple such instances have been reported. In some cases, intruling Chinese troops have left graffiti well inside Arunachal Pradesh. Chief Minister of the same state, Pema Khandu's bombshell comments on Tibet have been made in an exclusive interview to news agency PTI. China claims this entire Indian state as South Tibet. But Beijing is in a habit of claiming territory of all its neighbors from Japan to Taiwan and the Philippines, as well as claiming the entire South China Sea. Tomorrow, the Chinese Communist Party will also claim Mars as Chinese territory. But now, voices inside India are questioning whether China's occupation of Tibet is justified. A few days ago, Arunachal CM had really got under the skin of the CCP when he went to greet Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, in Dharamsala on his 90th birthday. The Dalai Lama himself has also rejected CCP's attempts to hijack Tibetan culture and claims the next Dalai Lama would be chosen by Tibetans and not by the Chinese Communist Party. So now the Arunachal Chief Minister has, in a way, backed the Dalai Lama and called out Chinese military invasion and occupation of Tibet. He added, "In Arunachal, we share 3 international boundaries, with Bhutan approximately 150 kilometers, with Tibet 1200 kilometers, which is one of the longest in the country, and on the eastern side, Myanmar approximately 550 kilometers. The Chinese military had invaded and occupied Tibet in the 1950s after it crushed a rebellion. Before 1950, Tibet had its own government, it had its own army, a currency, and even a national flag. But as China crushed Tibetan resistance, tens of thousands of Tibetans fled to India, led by the Dalai Lama, as they rejected living under the CCP occupation. Just a couple of years later, an Indo-China war also saw China occupying Aksai Chin region of Ladakh, and the LAC has remained tense ever since. Khandu's precision strike on Tibet occupation comes amid global media interest in Dalai Lama's birthday celebrations, which witnessed the attendance of several Indian officials. Even Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi extended birthday greetings to the Dalai Lama, calling him an enduring symbol of love, compassion, patience, and moral discipline. Modi posted on platform X, "His message has inspired respect and admiration across all faiths. We pray for his continued good health and long life," unquote. India's unwavering support for the Nobel Peace Prize winning Buddhist Tenzin Gyatso and his institution was highly evident. Central government's union ministers Kiran Rijiju and Rajiv Ranjan Singh, as well as Sikkim Minister Sonam Lama, alongside the Arunachal Chief Minister, all attended the Tibetan leader's birthday celebrations in Dharamsala, Himachal. Both Prime Minister Modi's wishes and attendance by Indian dignitaries signal New Delhi's tactical acknowledgement of the Tibetan cause as well as its government in exile. Of course, the Chinese CCP wasn't impressed, stating, "India needs to be fully cognizant of the sensitivity of the issues related to Xizang. See clearly the anti-China and separatist nature of the 14th Dalai Lama, honor the commitments India has made to China on issues related to Xizang." However, China's double standards are for all to see. How can it question New Delhi when it openly supports Pakistan's illegal occupation of POK, which remains legally and historically Indian territory? However, what India would never tolerate is China eyeing Arunachal Pradesh. In fact, Indian Union Minister Kiran Rijiju also supported Dalai Lama's right to decide on succession of his line, an idea Beijing has rejected, saying only the Communist Party will decide the next Tibetan spiritual leader. The CCP spokesperson added, "The 14th Dalai Lama is a political exile who has long engaged in anti-China separatist activities and seeks to separate Xizang from China under cloak of religion." Unquote. Now, first, CCP must realize it's called Tibet and not Xizang. This is a United Nations document from December 18, 1965, which calls out Chinese oppression of Tibetan human rights and suppression of the Tibetan culture. It states, "Gravely concerned at the continued violation of fundamental rights and freedoms of the people of Tibet and continued suppression of their distinctive culture and religious life, as evidenced by the exodus of refugees to neighboring countries." Unquote. Over 80,000 refugees initially sought refuge in India, along with Dalai Lama. By 2000s, the Tibetan community in India had grown to 150,000, though the numbers have since decreased. The United Nations paper from 1965 adds, quote, "Solemnly renew its call for the cessation of all practices which deprive the Tibetan people of the human rights and fundamental freedoms which they have always enjoyed," are the keywords here. New Delhi's decision to continue to grant asylum to the Dalai Lama and thousands of Tibetans has been an enduring flashpoint between the two Asian giants. The 14th Dalai Lama's claim last week has really rattled the CCP as it once again opens up the question of Tibetan independence. It was one of his boldest rejections of Chinese occupation till now. Dalai Lama added, "I hereby reiterate that the Gaden Phodrang Trust has the sole authority to recognize the future reincarnation. No one else has any such authority to interfere in this matter," in a signal to the CCP. According to the Tibetan Parliament in Exile based in Dharamsala, a framework has already been laid out to ensure continuity of leadership. Chinese ambassador to India, Xu Feihong, denied Dalai Lama's claim, saying he has no authority to abolish or continue the system, unquote. It is the same playbook running inside Tibet now that has been the fate of Xinjiang. A United Nations report on Xinjiang found, quote, "Allegations of patterns of torture or ill treatment, including forced medical treatment and adverse conditions of detention, are credible, as are allegations of individual incidents of sexual and gender-based violence." Tibetans have long accused China of destroying their culture, just like was witnessed in Xinjiang. But China isn't satisfied. The dragon's hunger for expansion is insatiable. PLA continues with its salami-slicing tactics and unlawful claims over India's northeastern state of Arunachal Pradesh, which it calls South Tibet. The CCP has repeatedly attempted to give new names to the regions inside this Indian state of Arunachal, which has an area of 90,000 square kilometers, which is nearly the same size as Portugal. The Indian Ministry of External Affairs reiterated Bharat's stance. Creative naming will not alter the undeniable reality that Arunachal Pradesh was, is, and will always remain an integral and inalienable part of India. So in a tit-for-tat move, the Modi government also restored 30 ancient names in Tibet which existed before the Chinese invasion in 1950s. The list includes water bodies, mountains, as well as residential places. As China continues to provoke India on the border issue, as well as launch an economic war on India by banning rare earths and fertilizers, it has only given rise to more support for the Tibetan cause inside India. Meanwhile, just last year, even the United States of America passed a law reaffirming its support for the Tibetan people, while US congressional delegation came to India to visit and greet the Dalai Lama. It seems, despite CCP bullying, the Tibetan cause is well and alive. But have your say. Do you agree with Arunachal Chief Minister that India shares its border with Tibet and not China? Leave a comment with your opinion, hit the like button and subscribe to Inconnect News.